Pause for a moment, because this is not entertainment, this is revelation. If you stumbled onto this message thinking it was another dramatic take on karma or payback, understand something clearly. This is deeper than revenge. This is remembrance. Energy never forgets. It may appear silent. It may seem delayed. It may look like nothing is happening while lies spread and manipulation moves behind closed doors. But energy records everything. And when the balance shifts, it does not explode randomly. It corrects itself with precision. You didn't have to fight back. You didn't have to expose them. You didn't have to defend yourself the way they expected. What they sent toward you is already circling back, recalibrating in unseen ways. And the most unsettling part for them is this: you didn't lift a finger. You became the glitch in their system, the unpredictable variable in equations built on control. They tried to define you, reduce you, decode you. Instead, you evolved beyond their framework, and now they cannot track what they cannot categorize. This message is not for everyone. It is for those who've always felt slightly out of phase with their environment. For those who walk into rooms and feel energy shift before words are spoken. For those who've been labeled too much, too intense, too different simply because they refuse to shrink. If this resonates, anchor it. Like this video. Subscribe so the aligned can find their way here. Drop 88 or 0 in the comments to seal this activation. Not as superstition, but as intention. This is not revenge. It is evolution remembering itself. The reason this is evolution and not revenge begins with something you have sensed your entire life. Your presence disrupts systems. Before you speak, something shifts. Before you sit down, someone straightens up. Before you introduce yourself, the atmosphere rearranges. You may have tried to downplay it. You may have told yourself you were imagining it. But your aura enters rooms before your body does. Presence is not volume, it is frequency. There are people who command attention by being loud, and then there are people who command attention by simply being. You fall into the second category. You do not need theatrics, you do not need spectacle. Your stillness unsettles more than someone else's performance. Why? Because systems built on manipulation depend on predictability. They thrive when people fit roles, respond on cue, follow scripts. But you do not follow scripts. You do not react the way they anticipate. You do not crumble under subtle pressure. You do not mirror insecurity back with insecurity. You mirror it with clarity, and clarity is destabilizing to those who rely on distortion. You've noticed how certain individuals stutter around you, overshare unexpectedly, or attempt to probe you with disguised questions. It is not random, it is psychological recalibration. Your presence alters emotional chemistry. It exposes hidden insecurity without you accusing anyone of anything. You're not conventionally attractive in the way magazines define attraction. You're gravitational. There is a difference. Conventional attraction invites admiration. Gravitational presence commands orbit. People feel pulled toward you, yet unsettled by what they feel. They cannot quite categorize it, and the inability to categorize you agitates them. Human beings crave labels. Labels create comfort. Comfort creates control, but you resist labels effortlessly. You're encrypted, not secretive. Not deceptive, encrypted. There are layers to you that only reveal themselves under sincerity. There are dimensions to you that cannot be accessed through manipulation. And those who are used to scanning people quickly, filing them into neat mental boxes, experience frustration when they encounter you. You became the unpredictable variable in systems that rely on repetition. And unpredictability terrifies those who live by strategy. For years, some people studied you, spiritually, emotionally, socially. They tried to decode your patterns, they analysed your reactions, they tested your boundaries. But something kept shifting. Every time they thought they understood you, you evolved again. Their obsession with studying you did not weaken you, it accelerated you. While they fixated on how to counter you, you refined yourself quietly. While they rehearsed tactics, you deepened awareness. While they attempted to predict your next move, you stopped operating from reaction altogether. Silence became your power. You did not retaliate, you recalibrated. You did not clap back, you outgrew. And growth is far more destabilizing than confrontation. Confrontation feeds ego, growth removes relevance. This is why they spin, not because you attacked them, but because you ascended beyond the version of you they thought they could manage. Your presence disrupts systems because it refuses to participate in unconscious games. And systems built on unconsciousness collapse when consciousness enters the room. The next evolution requires something subtle but powerful. Stop translating yourself for low frequencies. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. Somewhere along your journey you began over-explaining, clarifying your tone, softening your truth, repackaging your insight into more digestible language so others would feel comfortable. But comfort is not alignment. Over-explaining drains power because it signals doubt. When you over-translate your energy into simplified versions, you begin shrinking yourself to match someone else's comprehension. And that shrinkage fragments your authority. High-frequency truth cannot be digested by low-consciousness minds. This is not superiority, it is calibration. If someone is committed to survival-based thinking, depth feels threatening. If someone operates from insecurity, clarity feels confrontational. If someone depends on illusion, authenticity feels aggressive. You tried to meet them halfway, you tried to bridge the gap, but some gaps are not meant to be bridged. They are meant to be acknowledged. Protection is not arrogance. When you refuse to shrink, they may call you distant. When you stop explaining, they may call you cold. When you detach from chaotic conversations, they may call you detached. But what they label as arrogance is often alignment. Confusion from others is not evidence that you are wrong. It is confirmation that you are calibrated differently. Your rarity is not a flaw to be corrected. It is armor. You are multi-layered, multi-dimensional, and not everyone has clearance for every layer. The more you accept that, the lighter you feel. The exhaustion of constant translation fades. The need to prove diminishes. The pressure to be palatable dissolves. You do not need to be understood by everyone to be effective. You need to be aligned. And when you stop translating yourself into languages built for mediocrity, something stabilizes inside you. Your words sharpen. Your silence strengthens. Your presence intensifies without effort. Rarity is not loneliness. It is refinement. At the core of this entire evolution is something deeper than disruption or detachment. It is remembrance. Before the world labeled you, before teachers evaluated you, before relationships tried to reshape you, before society handed you definitions of success and worth, there was a version of you untouched by distortion. That version still exists. Sacred memory is not about past lives or fantasy. It is about remembering your original signal before conditioning layered over it. Social conditioning taught you to dim certain qualities, to doubt intuition, to prioritize approval, to measure worth by external metrics. But sacred memory whispers something else. It whispers that you have always known more than you were taught. That you have always sensed beyond what was visible, that you have always felt slightly out of place, not because you were flawed, but because your frequency did not fully match the system around you. Feeling out of place was not rejection, it was recognition. You were never meant to blend seamlessly into environments that required you to shrink. Every betrayal, every dismissal, every time someone underestimated you became an activation trigger. At the time it felt painful, confusing, unfair, but pressure cracks illusions, betrayal removes naivety, dismissal pushes you inward where clarity forms. Awakening is not acquiring something new, it is remembering what you always carried. The chills you feel when truth resonates, the instant knowing before logic catches up, the quiet confidence that grows without applause, that is memory resurfacing. And nothing threatens manipulators more than someone who remembers who they are. Because manipulation depends on self-doubt, control depends on confusion, but self-recognition dismantles both. As you remember yourself, you become unrecognizable to old systems. The version of you that tolerated subtle disrespect fades. The version that over-explained disappears. The version that sought validation dissolves. In its place stands someone grounded, aware, unreactive, clear. You're not confusing, you are recalibrated. And what they interpret as unpredictability is simply your refusal to operate from outdated scripts. This is not revenge, it is remembrance. And remembrance is irreversible. As you continue remembering who you are, another illusion begins to dissolve. Not everyone who watches you admires you, and not everyone who praises you respects you. There is a difference between fascination and reverence, between obsession and genuine love. You have felt it before. Compliments that land strangely, applause that feels hollow, smiles that stretch too wide, attention that seems excessive, almost invasive. On the surface it looks like admiration, but beneath it there is tension. Fascination studies, respect honors. Fascination is curious about how you work. Respect values who you are. Fascination wants access. Respect maintains boundaries. Fascination consumes. Respect protects. There are people drawn to your light not because they honor its source, but because they crave the feeling it gives them. Your presence energizes them. Your insight sharpens them. Your clarity stabilizes them. But instead of cultivating their own depth, they attempt to siphon yours. That is not love. That is energy addiction. Addiction seeks control. It seeks ownership. It seeks to contain what was never meant to be possessed. And when they realize they cannot own you, fascination begins to mutate into resentment. Projection follows quickly. They accuse you of being distant when you set boundaries. They call you arrogant when you stop over-explaining. They label you secretive when you simply refuse to overshare your evolution. But these accusations are not about you. They're about their inability to hold your depth without insecurity. Your growth highlights their stagnation. Your clarity exposes their confusion. Your self-possession mirrors their fragmentation. And instead of rising to meet you, some choose to resent you. There is danger in being impossible to own for those who depend on control to feel secure. You destabilize the illusion that everything can be managed. You embody autonomy. You represent something uncontainable. But understand this clearly, their discomfort is not your responsibility. When you detach, do not interpret it as cruelty. It is calibration. You're no longer feeding dynamics that rely on misunderstanding. You're no longer explaining yourself into exhaustion. You're no longer entertaining fascination disguised as loyalty. Let them spiral, not in malice, not in superiority, but in neutrality. You do not need to correct their narrative. You do not need to clarify their confusion. Their spiraling is part of their awakening if they choose it. And if they do not, that too is not your burden. Detachment is not indifference. It is discernment. You can wish someone well without allowing them access. You can appreciate admiration without accepting ownership. You can recognize fascination without mistaking it for love. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to evolve, and those who cannot hold your evolution without resentment were never meant to walk your next chapter. As you detach from fascination, something else becomes more visible. Energy exposes performance. There are people who rehearse kindness. They polish their tone, they master socially acceptable language, they perform empathy convincingly, but presence cannot be faked. You've noticed how certain words feel misaligned with the energy behind them. Compliments that vibrate with envy, support that hums with competition, encouragement that carries subtle condescension. You sense it instantly, and for years you questioned yourself. You wondered if you were overthinking, if you were too sensitive, if you were imagining inconsistencies. But sensitivity is not weakness. It is precision awareness. You're not hyper-reactive, you're finely tuned. When authenticity enters a room, performance becomes fragile. Masks slip, micro-expressions reveal what rehearsed sentences try to conceal. The body betrays what the mouth attempts to manage, and your presence amplifies this exposure. This is not something you intentionally do, it is simply the consequence of alignment. Presence disrupts persona. Persona is constructed. It depends on external validation. It thrives in environments where no one questions its foundation. But authenticity does not need rehearsal. It does not need polishing. It does not rely on perception management. And when authenticity stands beside persona, the contrast becomes uncomfortable. You are not intense. You are aligned. Intensity is often just projection. When someone feels pressure around you, it is rarely because you are overwhelming. It is because your alignment highlights their internal contradiction. They feel exposed not because you attacked them, but because your coherence makes their fragmentation visible, and that visibility unsettles. Quiet exposure is a natural consequence of alignment. You do not need to call anyone out. You do not need dramatic confrontations. Your consistency speaks. Your boundaries communicate. Your detachment clarifies. The more aligned you become, the less you need to defend yourself. You simply observe. Observation is power. When you stop reacting emotionally to every inconsistency, you begin to see patterns clearly. And patterns reveal truth faster than arguments ever could. The same individuals who once tried to manipulate narratives begin unraveling under their own contradictions. You remain steady. This steadiness is not coldness. It is mastery. You've learned that not every smile deserves trust. Not every apology signals change. Not every compliment carries sincerity. And instead of confronting each instance, you recalibrate quietly. You let time expose what you already sensed. And it always does. Energy does not lie. It may delay. It may disguise itself temporarily. But alignment eventually magnifies everything misaligned. And when it does, you are no longer shocked. You are prepared. You are not suspicious. You are discerning. And discernment is one of the most underestimated forms of strength. Now we arrive at the most transformative layer of your evolution alchemy. There were moments when what they did was not accidental. It was engineered, strategic, calculated. Words chosen to destabilize, actions designed to provoke, silence used as manipulation. Help offered with hidden hooks. It felt like poison, and in many ways it was. But here is the shift that altered everything. You stopped absorbing it as injury and began processing it as initiation. Engineered betrayal became unintended initiation. Each attempt to undermine you forced you inward. Each dismissal pushed you towards self-reliance. Each manipulation refined your discernment. What was meant to weaken you became blueprint. You learned to read between lines. You learned to trust instinct. You learned to detach without drama. You learn that not every battle requires participation. Emotional sabotage became data. Instead of reacting impulsively, you observed patterns. Instead of retaliating publicly, you recalibrated privately. Instead of internalizing accusations, you evaluated their source. Awareness replaced reaction. This is alchemy. Reaction keeps you tethered to the moment. Awareness elevates you above it. Reaction fuels conflict. Awareness transforms it. Silence became louder than retaliation. You realize that arguing with distortion only feeds it. Explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you only exhausts you. Fighting back in environments built on chaos only entangles you further. So you did something unexpected. You evolved. While they waited for you to explode, you expanded. While they anticipated confrontation, you recalibrated. While they rehearsed defenses, you withdrew energy. And the absence of your reaction destabilized them more than any argument could have. Survival mode once defined your responses. You defended yourself. You justified. You sought clarity through discussion. But survival has evolved into strategy. Now you move differently. You assess before you respond, and you observe before you speak. You detach before you escalate. You recognize that not every invitation deserves acceptance. Not every provocation deserves engagement. You have transcended reaction. That is ascension. You are no longer surviving what they created to break you. You are leveraging it. The fire that was meant to consume you forged you. The pressure that was meant to crush you clarified you. You do not deny what happened. You refine it. And this refinement is irreversible. What once would have shaken you now strengthens you. What once confused you now sharpens you. What once triggered insecurity now confirms growth. This is not revenge. It is transformation. They expected retaliation. They encountered evolution. And evolution is far more powerful. You did not become harder. You became clearer. You did not become colder. You became calibrated. You did not become vindictive. You became sovereign. And sovereignty is the highest form of alchemy. Because when you stop allowing poison to define you, it becomes fuel. When you stop allowing betrayal to shrink you, it becomes initiation. When you stop allowing sabotage to derail you, it becomes momentum. This is your ascension. Not loud, not chaotic, not performative, strategic. And those who once underestimated you are now witnessing something they cannot decode. Not because you changed into someone unrecognizable, but because you finally remembered who you were. And remembrance cannot be reversed. There was a time when you questioned yourself constantly, when you double-checked your instincts before trusting them, when you softened your voice so others would not feel threatened, when you rehearsed your thoughts internally before daring to speak them aloud. That season had a purpose. It was refinement, it was calibration, it was training, but that season is over. You're no longer in training. There is a subtle but undeniable shift that has taken place within you. You no longer enter rooms wondering how to fit. You enter rooms assessing whether the room fits you. You no longer measure your value by how comfortable others are around you. You measure your alignment by how honest you are within yourself. That is command. Command is not domination. It is composure. It is the steady knowing that you do not need to prove your strength because you are no longer negotiating with doubt. You once shrank to protect fragile egos. You diluted your brilliance so insecure minds could feel taller beside you. You overextended empathy to those who weaponized your kindness. But shrinking did not create peace. It created resentment. It created imbalance. It created internal tension between who you were and who you pretended to be. That tension suffocated you. And suffocation eventually forces clarity. You began noticing that certain rooms felt smaller the more you grew. Conversations that once felt stimulating began to feel repetitive. Spaces that once felt welcoming began to feel tight, constricted, claustrophobic. Claustrophobic rooms are not about square footage, they are about outgrown environments. When your consciousness expands, environments that rely on limitation begin to feel unbearable. It is not arrogance, it is evolution. A butterfly does not resent the cocoon once it has wings. It simply cannot remain inside it. Your intensity, the quality others once tried to label as too much, is not excess. It is authenticity pressure. When someone unfiltered enters a filtered environment, tension is inevitable. Your clarity presses against their ambiguity. Your decisiveness highlights their hesitation. Your self-assurance exposes their insecurity. But understand this carefully, you are not responsible for their discomfort. Intensity is only threatening to those who rely on illusion. When you stopped editing yourself, something remarkable happened. People began revealing themselves faster around you. Those who were aligned gravitated naturally. Those who depended on manipulation withdrew or became defensive. You did not chase either outcome, you observed. Observation matured into mastery. You are no longer seeking validation, you are embodying alignment. You no longer wait for permission to speak truth. You speak it with discernment, not aggression. You do not need to overpower, you simply need to be consistent. And consistency at your level becomes blueprint energy. There are people watching you, silently learning from your detachment, your boundaries, your steadiness. You may not realize it, but your evolution has become instructional. Not through speeches, not through confrontation, through example. You are now the example. The one who refused to stay small. The one who chose awareness over reaction. The one who turned betrayal into clarity. The one who ascended without revenge. You once wondered when your moment would come. This is it. Not a spotlight, not applause, command. Looking back, what felt like targeting was not random. You were not attacked by accident. Pressure followed potential. When something carries impact, or resistance appears proportionally. The targeting you experienced was confirmation of selection. Not because you are special in a superficial sense, but because you carry influence beyond your own awareness. Pressure was precision, chaos was sculpting you. When relationships collapsed unexpectedly, it was not always loss, it was removal. Illusions that once disguised themselves as loyalty could not withstand your increasing clarity. What you once tolerated out of habit, you began rejecting out of self-respect. Fake relationships rarely dissolve politely. They implode. And while the implosion felt painful, it carved space for something authentic. Pressure removes what comfort protects. Comfort keeps us numb. It allows mediocrity to linger. It invites stagnation disguised as stability. But pressure demands awareness. It forces you to assess. It exposes cracks in foundations you once trusted. Every chaotic season sharpened you. You learned who stands beside you in silence. You learned who celebrates privately but envies publicly. You learned who respects boundaries and who resents them. You learned who values growth and who fears it. And that knowledge is precision. You evolved under weight rather than comfort. Weight builds strength that ease cannot. When you carry responsibility, navigate betrayal, endure misunderstanding and still maintain integrity, something within you hardens in the best possible way. Not bitterness, not defensiveness, discernment. You stopped doubting yourself as much. At first, doubt lingered. You questioned whether you were overreacting, whether you were too strict, whether you were misreading signals. But as patterns repeated, you began decoding reality instead of internalizing confusion. From doubting to decoding, You now observe interactions like a strategist rather than a participant seeking approval. You recognize manipulation before it escalates. You see projection before it lands. You sense misalignment before it erupts. Pressure refined your perception. It taught you that not every invitation deserves acceptance, that not every opportunity deserves pursuit, that not every connection deserves permanence. The chaos was not punishment. It was preparation. Without it, you would still be negotiating your boundaries. Without it, you would still be apologizing for your clarity. Without it, you would still be chasing validation from environments incapable of offering it. Pressure sculpted your sovereignty, and sovereignty is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It simply exists, stable, rooted, unapologetic. You are no longer confused by chaos. You decode it. Now we reach something even deeper than personal evolution. Because what you are doing does not end with you. You are the glitch in the bloodline. Every family, every lineage carries patterns, emotional avoidance, suppressed communication, normalized betrayal, codependent dynamics, silent resentment, generational trauma disguised as tradition. Most inherit these patterns without questioning them. You did not. You felt discomfort where others felt familiarity. You questioned what others accepted. You challenged what others normalized, and that alone made you different. Sensitivity, which was once criticized, was actually advanced perception. You noticed subtle manipulations others ignored. You felt tension beneath forced harmony. You sensed dishonesty beneath polite conversation. What others labeled as overthinking was actually heightened awareness, and awareness disrupts cycles. Being the glitch in the bloodline is not glamorous. It often feels isolating. You are misunderstood by those who benefit from silence. You are labeled dramatic for addressing what others would rather bury. You are called difficult for refusing inherited dysfunction. But you are not difficult, you are sovereign. Refusing inherited trauma patterns requires courage. It means saying, "This ends with me." It means confronting dynamics others avoid. It means healing wounds others pass down. It means choosing clarity over comfort. That is strength. You stopped mirroring manipulation. You stopped participating in emotional games. You stopped tolerating passive aggression disguised as tradition. You stopped absorbing guilt that was never yours to carry. And in doing so, you shifted the trajectory. Healing does not always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like detachment. Healing does not always require closure. Sometimes it requires distance. You learn to detach without drama, to step back without spectacle, to create boundaries without announcement. That quiet departure often speaks louder than confrontation. And here is the profound truth. Breaking cycles will always feel like betrayal to those invested in them. When you refuse to participate, the system reacts. But systems that rely on dysfunction collapse when one participant withdraws. You withdrew not out of bitterness, out of clarity. And clarity ends cycles. Your children, if you have them, or will one day inherit something different because of you. Your friends witness boundaries and learn from them. Your peers observe your sovereignty and question their own patterns. You're not just evolving, you're interrupting. Interrupting generational silence. Interrupting emotional immaturity. Interrupting normalized manipulation. Interrupting inherited limitation. The glitch in the bloodline is not chaos. It is correction. You were never meant to carry every burden passed down to you. You were meant to transform it. And transformation does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like calm detachment. Sometimes it looks like saying no without explanation. Sometimes it looks like leaving quietly and not returning. That is not abandonment. That is ascension. You have moved beyond survival. You have moved beyond reaction. You have moved beyond inherited narratives. You're not fighting your lineage, you're refining it, and refinement is irreversible. This is not revenge, it is remembrance, it is sovereignty, it is evolution stabilizing into command. And from here there is no shrinking back. By now you've felt it more than once, that flash in your chest, that tightening in your stomach, that sudden clarity before any evidence appears. The room feels different. The tone shifts, the air changes, and before logic assembles its case you already know, trust that. Your intuition is not random emotion, it is higher signal intelligence. It is pattern recognition operating faster than conscious thought. Your mind gathers data through words. Your intuition gathers data through energy. It scans posture, tone, micro-expressions, inconsistencies, rhythm. It reads what is unsaid. For years you were taught to doubt it. You were told you were overthinking, too sensitive, suspicious, dramatic, and so you overrode the signal with logic. You gave people the benefit of the doubt while ignoring the discomfort in your body. You silenced instinct to preserve harmony. But harmony built on self-betrayal is distortion. There is a difference between paranoia and precision. Paranoia invents threats without evidence. Precision senses incongruence based on subtle cues. Paranoia is fueled by fear. Precision is anchored in calm observation. When you are paranoid, your body is frantic. When you are precise, your body is steady but alert. Your instant knowing has never screamed. It has whispered. Energy scanning goes beyond logic. Logic waits for proof. Intuition recognizes patterns before they repeat. When someone's smile does not match their eyes, you notice. When someone's praise carries tension, you feel it. When someone's silence feels loaded rather than peaceful, you register it instantly. You read rooms before words are spoken. That is not mysticism. It is awareness sharpened by experience. You survived manipulation. You navigated inconsistency. You endured environments where survival required perception. Your nervous system adapted. It learned to detect misalignment quickly. Now that survival is no longer your dominant state, that same perception becomes strategy. You no longer react emotionally to every red flag. You simply adjust your access. You move accordingly. You respond proportionally. That is mastery. Manipulation depends on delay. It depends on you second-guessing yourself long enough for the narrative to take root. But when you trust instant knowing, manipulation loses speed. You outpace it. You do not need to argue. You do not need to prove. You observe, recalibrate, and proceed. That quiet adjustment is power. Trust the knowing that arrives before the explanation. It has protected you more times than you realize. It has redirected you from alliances that would have drained you. It has slowed you before impulsive decisions. It has alerted you to shifts others missed. You are not paranoid, you are precise, and precision is a gift. Now we address what many secretly wait for: justice. There was a time when you wanted exposure, vindication, public acknowledgement of wrongdoing. You imagined scenarios where truth would erupt dramatically and everyone would see clearly. But justice rarely announces itself loudly. Energetic consequence unfolds in silence. You did not need to fight for it. You did not need to gather evidence or campaign for sympathy. The same energy they projected began destabilizing them from within. When someone builds power on distortion, instability is inevitable. It may not be immediate, but it is inevitable. You became the courtroom. Not through accusation, but through embodiment. Your growth became evidence. Your stability became contrast. Your peace became proof. While they maintained narratives, you maintained alignment. Illusions collapse from internal instability. When someone lies repeatedly, they begin contradicting themselves. When someone manipulates consistently, they lose track of their masks. The cracks appear slowly, then all at once, and you did not need to push. Distance became the consequence. There is something more devastating than retaliation irrelevance. When you stop engaging, the dynamic starves. When you stop defending yourself, the accusations echo hollow. When you rise beyond their reach, their influence shrinks naturally. Distance is louder than revenge. Revenge keeps you entangled. Distance sets you free. You did not need to win an argument. You needed to win your focus back. You did not need to destroy anyone. You needed to detach from what was destroying your peace. And as you detached, justice unfolded organically. The loudest justice is your rise. Watching you thrive in spaces they predicted you would fail is consequence enough. Observing your calm when they expected collapse is consequence enough. Witnessing your expansion when they engineered limitation is consequence enough. You did not seek justice, you embodied it. Now the final truth crystallizes. Your elevation is not retaliation. It is earthquake. An earthquake does not argue with buildings. It shifts the ground beneath them. Your ascension has shifted the ground beneath narratives built against you. Suddenly, what once felt stable for them feels uncertain. Silence became the storm. You did not broadcast your healing. You did not announce your detachment. You did not dramatize your growth. But your glow intensified, and glow when authentic functions as karma, not punishment, consequence. They expected you to remain in predictable roles, to stay accessible, to stay reactive, to stay explainable. But you evolved beyond relevance. Thriving in places they predicted failure was not coincidence, it was recalibration. You stopped moving from insecurity and began moving from clarity. And clarity attracts opportunity differently. You chose environments aligned with your frequency rather than environments comfortable for others. Ascension does not mean superiority, it means perspective. From where you stand now, old conflicts feel smaller. Old accusations feel distant. Old dynamics feel outdated. The need to prove dissolves. The need to compete evaporates. The need to explain fades. You did not defeat them. You outgrew them, and outgrowing is irreversible. This is the final anchor. This is evolution, not revenge. You're not rising to spite anyone. You're rising because stagnation is no longer compatible with you. So let them spin. Let them attempt to decode what they cannot categorize. Let them theorize about your silence. Let them project confusion onto clarity. You're not confusing, you're calibrated differently. Confusion around you is confirmation of transformation. It means you're no longer predictable to systems that relied on your predictability. It means you no longer respond the way you once did. It means you have stepped beyond roles assigned to you. Detachment over a reaction is final mastery. You do not clap back, you calibrate. You do not retaliate, you recalibrate. You do not chase justice, you embody it. If this message resonated, anchor it intentionally, like this. Subscribe to remain aligned with this frequency. Comment 88 or 0 to seal your alignment, not as ritual but as decision. Because from here forward, your energy speaks louder than your explanations. You were never meant to clap back. You were meant to outgrow, to outglow, to outlive every false narrative ever attached to your name. Let them spin. You ascend.